Welcome to Dental Business RX. Practice success in 30 minutes or less.
Thank you for calling ABC Dental.
How much marketing do you do to your existing patient base? If you're the average practice, little to none. I mean, the best it usually gets is maybe some back-to-school mailers or use it or lose it letters towards the end of the year regarding dental insurance. Other than that, most marketing in dental practice is targeted at new patients. But here's the funny thing. A healthy general dental practice should be making at least 65 to 70% of its revenues from patients of record, repeat business. So while new patients are important, and I don't want you to get the idea that they're not or that you should not market for new patients as much, what this does tell us, the fact that so much revenue should be coming from your existing base, is that some, and by some I mean a lot, of effort should be being made to market to your existing base. So why would you do this? How would you go about it? And what would happen to your practice if you did it right? Well, that's what I want to talk about in this week's episode. My name is Jeff Blumberg, and I'm your host, and I want to start this off by zeroing in on the purpose of marketing. Why are we marketing in the first place? And there's a lot of quotes I could pull from influential people in the influential. I had trouble with that word for a second. Influential people in the marketing space. But I thought the most direct one comes from a guy named Sergio Zyman. He used to be the chief marketing officer for Coca-Cola. He's also written a couple books, one called The End of Marketing as We Know It. And he comes just straight out. He says, the sole purpose of marketing is to sell more to more people more often. There is no other reason to do it. And if you look at a lot of accomplished marketeers, that thread flows through a lot of the quotes that are lifted from these folks. You know, it should make sales easier. It should make sales almost irrelevant. It should be marketed so well. The idea is marketing is supposed to sell stuff. Okay, so now I would challenge you to a thought experiment, and you can apply this to anything. I'll give you a couple examples, and maybe they're not the best, but when you buy something, whatever that might be, a pair of sneakers, or you go to a particular restaurant, or you buy a particular car, what drove you to buy that? Maybe you saw it somewhere, maybe you saw it in social media, maybe it fits a particular need. You see, maybe let's take a silly example. Let's say I'm putting a new door up in my house and I need a hole saw that I'm going to attach to my drill. I know I've probably lost half the audience now, but bear with me. Basically, it drills a hole that I can fit the doorknob through. So I need a hole saw. So am I buying a hole saw because I really want a hole saw? You didn't expect me to talk about hole saws on a dental podcast, did you? But here we go. No, I'm buying it so that I can get a hole in my door. Okay. Or if someone buys a purse, why are they buying a purse? Now they might be the label on the purse, but they're probably thinking, okay, this purse would look good with this. It'll make me look better. It'll fit with this outfit. It'll be great for this event I'm going to. In other words, people buy these things not so much for the sake of having that thing. They're buying it for the product it's going to get them. That's the whole idea. Same thing if you take a look at why would a patient buy veneers? Well, they want to look better. But what's funny is most people, you'd be surprised, some people have a general idea of what a veneer is, but they really don't understand what they are. And you're not buying a veneer or asking for a dentist to place veneers in your mouth so that you can walk around to people and point to number 7 and 8 and go, oh, see, these teeth cost me $1,600 each. No, you want them to look so natural that nobody knows they're a veneer. You want it to improve your overall look. You're buying it for the product that you're going to look better. So when people buy something, they're buying it for what it's going to get them. Sometimes they need it, like you buy food because you need it, but you buy particular foods because there's a certain product you're going for. It tastes good, maybe it's good for your diet, whatever, okay? So where does marketing come to play in all of this? Let's say I need to buy a tool. Well, what's going to make me buy a particular tool? Because there's a lot of different brands of that tool. Well, maybe I'm sold on a particular brand like Klein or Milwaukee or Wera or something like this. That's high quality. Or maybe I'm looking for a particular price point. Or maybe the way it's displayed in the store influences my decision. Same thing with why does somebody buy a purse? Maybe it's the name. It's, Chanel or Dior or Louis V or something. It really depends on who's buying it, but ultimately the person is buying that thing based on some marketing that was done to them or for them. If I can have a celebrity take a certain purse, well, that notches that, especially if they're like a fancy celebrity, that notches up the value of that purse in people's mind. That is marketing. But then let's go back to dental procedures for a second, right? So why would a person, we talked about why a person would get veneers, but what type of advertising is normally done for veneers? People generally don't even know where these are. People draw a bit of a blank if you ask them about veneers or how they work or how big they are and how they're, placed on a tooth. And most offices don't advertise them at all. But you have people in your patient base who actually need them. And the funny thing about dental marketing, especially to patients of record, is there's nothing actually marketing it. It's basically explained. So a patient comes into your practice, they have some problems, and then you tell them, okay, you're going to need 2 onlays, and you need this, and you need that. Let's say the onlays, and they go, what's an onlay? And you explain it to them. Maybe you have some pictures, maybe you have some before and afters, etc. But that's the extent of dental marketing. It's based on a case-by-case basis where you're explaining to somebody, you're explaining something to somebody, okay? And to Zyman's point, marketing is about moving people to buy. And once you start seeing how it works on you, any type of marketing, and this is just a thought experiment you can do for yourself. Look at the things that you buy. What made you buy that? Including how did you become aware of it? What made you decide that was the thing for you? You start to get an idea of how marketing works. And on top of that, take a look at items that you buy repetitively. Maybe you only buy a certain kind of sneakers. Maybe you only buy a certain type of jeans or athleisure or something like this. What moved you in that direction? Maybe you enjoyed the product, which is important, obviously, but before you could enjoy the product, you had to be made aware of the product. How were you made aware? Okay, so bringing it back to dentistry, how would you market to your patient base, and why would you market to your patient base? Well, obviously, if you're a general practice, firstly, you'd want to keep them active so that you see them regularly and you don't lose them. And if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know that this is a huge problem in dentistry, the drop-off rate, the number of active patients a person ends up with. But then I would add an additional tier to this, beyond just keeping people active. I would want to target marketing to specific patients that would actually help sell more of the services that they need. And here's the kicker. If I'm marketing, let's say I'm doing an implant funnel. I'm not saying you shouldn't do these. You should. I'm casting out a big net. And I'm hoping people who need implants respond to this and they, go through all the hoops and they answer all the questions so that I end up with qualified prospects who need implants. But if a patient responds to your funnel, do you know that they need implants? You have an idea. Do you know that you can help them? Not necessarily until you've met them. Well, that's with a new patient. With a patient of record, you've already diagnosed the treatment. You at least have a diagnosis that you did at some point in time. There's a valid need that's already pre-established with these patients of record. Look at your incomplete treatment list. These are all people that need to be marketed to and sold. And if the marketing is good, sales become that much easier, okay? So how would we go about doing this? Well, I'm going to lay it out in stages. We'll start with sort of the bare minimum and work our way up from there. And my basic point here is if you have an established practice, this can easily double or triple your volume, revenue, and referrals, right? And why would it triple your referrals? Because if you're bringing in patients, you'll find that the patients who tend to refer the most patients to you are patients who are satisfied with treatment that you've done. So if you can get people back and actually complete these treatment plans, you're going to get more referrals, okay? And in the end, everybody wins. The patient is healthier, your practice is healthier, you're happy, you have more career satisfaction, etc. So the first stage, because again, we're marketing to our patient base, A, to keep them active, and B, to target them with specific services. The first stage is to keep the patient base active and retained, okay, and coming in on a regular basis. Even if our overall marketing is anemic, if we have a volume of patients coming in regularly and not falling between the cracks, we can at least talk to them about what's going on with their dental health. So how would we increase our retention? Well, we would start with the basics. Good customer service. The office would be clean and attractive. You might want to, I always recommend if you want to know how does my office look, walk outside for a second and walk back in. You got to change your viewpoint a little bit and pretend you've never been there. Or have a friend of yours who doesn't come to your office regularly walk in and see things that maybe you aren't seeing. When you go into the same environment day in and day out, you tend to get numb to things. You might have folders, for example, sitting on your desk that have been sitting there for 6 months. and you don't notice anymore. They sort of become part of the furniture. Whereas someone coming in who hasn't been in your practice will notice that there's a stack of folders on your desk. They don't know how long they've been there, but they're going to notice that faster than you. If you can do this on your own, great. If you can't, have a friend come in and do it. So if we target retention, we're going to start with just some simple math. And again, I've done numerous episodes on this, but let's just start with some simple math here. The first thing I would do is take a look at my software and look at how many patient charts do I have total. So let's say I have, 5,000 charts. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is look at how many people after today have a next visit date. So how many charts? That's easy to see when you open up your software. Any software will tell you this. And then after tomorrow, or after today rather, so starting tomorrow, how many people have a next visit date? If you're the average office and you have 5,000 charts, the number of people with a next visit date is going to be 1,000, maybe 1,500. You may go, no, Jeff, there's no way. Trust me. You may be an anomaly. Maybe you have 4,000 with the next visit date, but I would bet that you don't. This is, again, I could go off on this into a whole other episode. I've done whole other episodes on this, but this is part of the flaw in the dental business model. There's a lot of attention paid to getting in new patients, which you should, and you should not relax the amount of attention you're paying, but there's very little attention paid to keeping people active in the practice because we don't have the mechanisms in place to actually keep people active. And if you've heard this before, I'll keep this brief, but if you haven't, this is something that's important. So I want you to look at the amount of effort you put in to getting a new patient into your practice. You spent money on advertising or however you got that person attracted to your practice. You might be doing an implant funnel, Google pay-per-click, Facebook, postcards, whatever it is. So you do this and the person responds and the person who answers the phone, your front desk has to be sharp in the way they handle this inquiry. Get the person on the schedule and get the person to show up. So that we put a lot of effort into this. New patients are really, really important, and I agree. So then that patient comes in, we do our exam, we do our treatment presentation, they accept or don't accept the treatment. Let's say they accept. You do the treatment that they need, or maybe part of the treatment that they need, and you schedule them for their next checkup, okay, which might be 3 months, 4 months, or 6 months from now. So that's the mechanism, our recall area or hygiene department that keeps people active within the practice, which is a great mechanism, and no other business really has this. I'm sure there's something out there similar to it, but no business has it that I'm aware of right off the top of my head, a built-in requirement to show up at least twice a year. I mean, most businesses would kill for that. I'd love it if people had to come to MGE twice a year. That'd be great, easy for my business. I see people all the time. I see them before they have big problems. I don't have to wait till they have a catastrophic issue because I haven't seen them in 2 years, you see? So you have that built-in mechanism in your business. So now this is where it starts to go wrong. The amount of effort, employee, manpower, man-hours spent on keeping these people coming back is usually anemic. It's low. It's not very good. So, this person misses their 3 or 4 month recall for whatever reason. They were out of town, they weren't expecting, they had a conflict, and then you don't schedule them for their next visit, or you tell them you'll call them back later. Then eventually, before you know it, 3, 4, 5 more months have passed by because nobody in the office has the job to chase down people who don't have their next hygiene visit scheduled. It's no one's job. Usually people do it when they have time. So if the office is busy, you're not going to have time to do this. When the office is not busy, everybody gets on the phone and you get these people back. But this goes on long enough. Eventually it's a year, 2 years, 3 years, but since this patient has been in. And then for some reason, and I have no idea how this developed in the industry, it's one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. We decide that because it's been 2 years, the patient is no longer active and they don't want to come back, and we purge the chart. We stop calling them, which is silly. It's extremely silly. And so you spend all this time, effort, or whatever, getting the new patient. That's when everybody's on the ball. Everybody's performing at 100%. Then once they're a patient of record, it's almost like we forget all about them. So this is a silly thing to do. It's an extremely silly thing to do. And I'll tell you, the secret to all this, the simplicity to all this is this. Some people are very easy to deal with. About 20% of your base is going to be very easy to deal with. Meaning these are the patients who, if you cancel their hygiene appointments because it was a snow day and you don't reschedule, they will chase you to get the next visit down. Okay, these are your top tier patients. But it's only about 20% of your patient base. The next 60% are varying degrees of more difficult, but they're good people. 20% of people probably shouldn't have there. We've talked about that before. But the next 60% are a little bit more difficult. Those are the people that need follow-up. They're not as compliant. Doesn't make them deficient or defective or wrong. It's just that's the way it is. That's how some people are. They need a little bit more follow-up. You know patients I'm talking about like this. They're nice enough people. They just need reminders and calls, and they forget, and life gets busy and things like that. Well, if you're only allocating time for those 20% of the practice that's easy, you're going to end up only keeping 20% of your practice and losing the other 80. Okay, so you have to make time for this. This is why usually when you look at total charts, how many people has the next visit, that's when you start to go, oh my gosh, you're losing it. You're losing quite a few of these people. So what do we do to immediately increase our retention? Well, beyond the good customer service, making the office look great or whatever, we want to stay in continuous communication with our patient base. And this could be done in a number of ways, text, calls, emails, letters, bulk texts, etc. But you might even split it up within the office by function. So let's say we started with the example of 5,000 charts and 1,500 have a next visit date. That's 3,500 people who don't. Okay, 3,500 people don't have a next visit date. So some people haven't been in for a year, some people 6 months, some people 5 years. So what do we do? Well, we're going to probably have to have it where some people in the office, might even be the dental assistants, the hygienist, everybody spends a little bit of time every week calling some of these patients. Maybe an hour a week, 2 hours a week, or whatever. Okay? Then we have our schedule coordinator. They can spend a little bit more time on this. And you can split it up. If you have a treatment coordinator, I would have them focused on patients who are overdue for cleanings and not scheduled that have outstanding treatment. They get them back on the hygiene schedule and start the whole sales process all over again. To back that up, I'm going to have my reactivation letters, and I'll put a free copy of our reactivation program, which has a series of 4 letters you can send to patients to get them back as a free download on the episode webpage. But texts, emails, you could do your letters as an email as well, so I could send somebody a letter as well as an email so that I make sure they get it somehow. I could also text them the same thing. But it's continuous communication. I want these people getting contacted regularly to make sure that I can actually keep them active. And part of the problem is you have a bit of a backlog right now if you're in a situation where you have 5,000 charts and only 1,500 have a next visit date. That means it's 3,500 people that don't have a next visit date. So let's take a second, and I know you may drop into apathy a little bit here as I talk about this, but if you have 3,500 people that don't have a next visit date, how often do you think we should contact these people to try to get them to schedule? Now, I can tell you if I ask a room full of doctors during a seminar, how often should we call these patients? The most common answer I get is at least once a week. Some people are like, once a day. I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's very real. Once a month, maybe too infrequent. Once a week, I think that's reasonable. And what will happen if you call them once a week? You'll have some people say, I'm not coming back. Some people say, I moved to another country or another state and I won't be coming back. And some people saying, oh my gosh, yeah, I have to schedule. Some people saying, don't call me anymore, whatever, right? You're going to have varying degrees of responses where people, you just leave voicemails and you don't get a hold of them, okay? So if you have 3,500 people with no next visit date and you want them called once per week, that's 3,500 calls per week. So let's say you're open 5 days a week. That's 700 calls per day. So I can tell you with salespeople, which is not what I'd be dealing with in your practice, a salesperson can make maybe 100 calls a day if they're decent. You're probably going to make less. And it's not so much the number of calls, it's the number of people I'm having people talk to, right? Now, that's assuming also that my texts and emails may be having people call in and come off the list themselves, hopefully. But that's not going to get most of them. It's going to get maybe my lower 20%, my low-hanging fruit, so to speak, the easy ones. So most of these people are going to have to be called. So this is where you have to confront, to a degree, you might even have to hire somebody, that this is just what they do all day, maybe even a couple of somebodies, if this is a bigger problem in your practice. But the bottom line is I want to make sure that these people are getting regular communication. And then what I'm going to do in the practice to stop the hemorrhaging is make sure that a patient never leaves without a next visit date. That's just a no-no. And B, I'm going to want to promote the fact within the practice that people should be coming in for regular checkups. We don't promote that. We promote sleep apnea, we promote Invisalign, we promote other things, but we don't promote that you should be showing up regularly for your checkups. I'd be promoting that very heavily. And even as the dentist, when you come in and do the exam, you go, don't forget to make your next appointment. It's important that we see you again in 3 months. Make it a big deal. And you might have people show up more frequently. So that's the first thing I would do. Get that sorted out so that people are showing up regularly. Then, of course, I would do the standard, letters back to school, use it or lose it, etc. And I would send them out to the entire patient base as via email and snail mail, most likely. And then I would actually send out, at least on a quarterly basis, some form of a practice newsletter. Now, you can buy these canned newsletters. I'm not huge fan of these canned newsletters. I prefer the more the ones that look a little bit more homemade, just because I think they're more apt to be opened. So to keep this simple, you get a big 11 by 17 sheet of paper, folded to mail size. It's folded down twice, folded in half and then folded in half again. And what would be in there? Each newsletter could have a simple educational article, short helpful tips on dental health or new types of treatments, etc., right? Or, how to brush your kids' teeth or whatever, right? You would have any team and office news, office improvements, new team members, a new doctor, team milestone. Sarah's been with us for 10 years. I would have something that highlights particular services. These would either be new services I'm delivering or services that a large portion of my patient base needs. If a lot of patients need implants, I'd have stuff on implants on there. And I would make sure that I'm focusing on the end product, right? So I'd have before and afters and things like this that people could see. And then I would have some form of a special offer at the end of the newsletter. Free consultation, discounted something, because you want what we call a call to action in marketing. And some people have a button on this, not so much as they used to back in the day. I remember when I would talk to doctors about advertising back in the 90s, you need some kind of a call to action, a discounted cleaning or a discounted exam. And it'll be like, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, well, so you're going to send a postcard out saying, get healthy teeth and gums for life, and cavities and gum disease are bad. Thank you very much. Here's my phone number. There's no reason for them to call. There's a reason. You want to give them a reason to call, whatever that might be that you're comfortable with. So these actions alone, if you had regular communication going to your patient base, text, email, snail mail, etc., and you at least had a quarterly newsletter hitting your patient base, if you just did this consistently, you would see a bump. But we really haven't, quote unquote, marketed to our base yet. And by marketing, meaning pushing particular services. We've done a little bit in the newsletter, but how could we notch this up a bit? Okay. So a couple things you can do. It's actually 4 or 5 things we're going to do. First thing we're going to do is we're going to pick specific services that we want to market. So it depends on what you do. Implants, crowns, veneers, inlays, onlays, clear aligners. Maybe you do FMR cases, all in X cases, whatever it might be. And we're going to market those within the office. This is where we want posters and signage which focus on the end result. And this is where things like Invisalign will send you these marketing materials. Same thing with companies that do sleep apnea appliances. They'll send them to you, but there's no reason you can't make similar type materials for things that you already do in the practice, whether it's an inlay, onlay, veneer, full mouth rehabs, whatever that might be. You would advertise these in the office. You can have posters in the various operatories or in the front. They can be very tasteful. You should also film videos on these, explaining what these are with before and after pictures. Make sure you get the proper releases from the patients if you're going to feature their before and after pictures in any of this stuff. Like we have a client who makes when he sells an implant case, he makes educational videos and implants that the patient watches before he actually presents the case. And they're not boring and dry. They're very simple, so the patient understands a little bit about what the doc is going to be talking to them about. He's marketing. So if you're making videos explaining these things, everybody's got a TV in their reception area, and that TV is either might be playing Casey videos, they might be playing, Animal Planet, or sometimes it's just a screensaver that I've seen. They should be playing promotional videos as well as patient testimonials in your reception area. That's what I would do, just keep it real low. So you might have a video where you're explaining, what a root canal is, or what an implant is, or what an all-on-X case is, or whatever it is that what clear aligners are. You're playing in your reception, interposed or interspersed with patient testimonial videos with before and afters. So, and it can be low, but it can be subtitled so people can see it, so you don't have to have it blasting and hearing it through the office. But what's beautiful about this is if you have these videos going and they're going in your reception, this video content can be repurposed a billion different ways. And this is a lot easier today than you think, okay? So let's say you make a bunch of videos on procedures. Very, very simple. Well, you could put those on your website on specific pages detailing those procedures. Now, this isn't patient of record marketing, by the way. This is new patient marketing, but you can use it for that. You could put it on your YouTube channel. You could put it on your Instagram. You could put it on your Facebook page. You can use, there's numerous softwares that do this. There's one in particular I like called Descript. It's just descript.com. It's not very expensive. You can take your videos, you load them into Descript, and it uses its AI to break it into 5 or 6 shorts. And they're really well-made shorts that are well subtitled. You can make shorts for each of these, which then allows you to dump them onto TikTok, make Instagram reels out of them. You can use them anywhere. So you can take this content and repurpose it all over the internet. And on top of that, if you do a really nice video, you can transcribe it and use that copy. Let's say I want to do a page about All-in-X cases. I do a video explaining All-in-X cases, showing lots of before and afters. I throw it through Descript. I end up with shorts that I can put all over my social media, as well as the full video I can put on Facebook and I can put on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. But then I have all these these transcripts as well I can use as the copy for my webpage on All-in-X coming straight out of my mouth. So this is super, super simple. Trust me, the actions involved in this, I've done them myself. It is super, super simple. And what that does, I know I've said super, super simple a lot, but it really is. What that does, if you have this playing in your office, as well as all the other type of promotion in the office that's done tastefully, is it's planting these seeds in patients' minds, especially if they're missing teeth, or they don't like how their teeth look, or they're crooked, and you'll have patients start asking you about, hey, would I be able to get veneers on these teeth? Or, hey, would I be able to get this clear aligner thing for these lower teeth? They'll start asking you these questions. They're already half sold by the time you talk to them, just sitting in the waiting room or seeing posters on your wall. I would also make sure that my staff, if I'm doing this, understand what these procedures are in case patients ask them about them. So a patient sees in the reception area a full mouth rehab poster or something. You'd have to have a way of explaining it real well. But, like before and afters of a bunch of cosmetic work. If they ask your receptionist about that, like, hey, would I be a candidate for this? Your receptionist has to be able to answer that question intelligently. They can't go, what? They have to be able to answer it intelligently. Oh, well, what we'll do when you go back with the doctor, I'll mention that to him, and he could sit down and do an exam and explain this, that. Like, you want to make sure that they know what's going on. So everybody's on the same page. All right, so that would get marketing going inside the practice to the people who are walking in your 4 walls. What about the people who aren't walking in your patients of record? This is where we take it up another notch and we start targeting specific patients. Now, you could run a list of people, let's say, for example, who are missing teeth. They need implants. And we could target these people with a specific campaign, emails, mailers, etc. I do that here at MGE. When a person fills out a form, they pick the area of their practice that's causing them the most trouble, or the thing they're having the most trouble with, new patients or staff or whatever that might be, case acceptance, organization. And then I can target specific marketing to that person. Like, why would I target organizational or management marketing to somebody whose problem is new patients? Or if someone's really interested in profitability, why would I market to them about, scheduling? It just doesn't make sense. I would target them based on what their preferences are. Well, you can target people based on what their problems are, and this is not very difficult because you have treatment plans and you have names. So you can pick out who needs these procedures and target specific things to these people via email, mail, etc. I would make sure if I was doing a series of letters or emails to a patient who needed implants that I would show them lots of before and afters and explain to them like why they need them or why it's important that we get them done in an easy, accessible way. This is what Google and social media does. I don't know if you've seen this with ad tracking. If you search for a particular item, you're looking at, a light fixture, the next website you go on, in their banner ad area, there'll be something for the light store. You're like, how the heck did that get there? Well, they're targeting you based on your prior search. So we're not going that creepy, but we are taking our information we have about our patients of record, finding out what it is that they need, and marketing what they need to them. This is what new patient funnels do. When you have implant funnels, they target specific people who are missing teeth, and then they jump through various hoops, and you end up with what you end up with at the end. And, you can do this with Facebook even, or used to be able to, and you can talk to whoever does your Facebook marketing would know this. You can, in theory, upload your email list and target those people with particular ads. I don't know, you're going to have to check the HIPAA aspects of that before you do that. Don't take my advice on that one before I do it. I would check that just to be on the safe side. But the idea is I would at least target it with the information I have about the patients and communicate to them about those particular procedures. Because the funny thing with marketing is sometimes it takes a repeated message to make the needle move. So maybe they got a letter from you about why implants are important, or another letter about getting their teeth replaced, or another letter about this, and they're seeing pictures each time. And finally, that third time, they contact you for a free consultation. You see? And again, you're going to want to make sure you have some type of a call to action. Call me today for a free consultation, or whatever it is it might be. Okay? The point being is the more effort and focus you place on this, the better the result is going to be, and it's something you need to monitor regularly. And as you get more and more new patients, now obviously we hope our close rate is decent, so we're going to close a lot of them for the treatment that they need, but there are going to be ones we don't. So this list will keep it from growing too large, but if we're doing this as a regular thing, marketing specific procedures to patients who need them, we'll catch these people up in that marketing campaign if they didn't buy the first time that they were in the practice. You see, for now, you're probably dealing with a backlog because most practices have a huge inactive list to begin with. And look, this is by no means an exhaustive list of anything and everything you can do. There's lots of, for example, marketing you could be doing outside the practice. I mean, these are not new, for not patients of record, but there's lots of new patient marketing you could be doing. This is specifically focusing on patients of record. And if anything, I hope it gets you thinking with that you should be placing a huge focus on your current base along with whatever you're doing for new patient acquisition. The average practice doesn't, goes new patient crazy, and then just loses people. So what I would prefer to see is instead you get a patient, you make every effort you can to get them fully restored health, function, and aesthetic. And some people are easy and some people are more difficult. And we don't just focus on the easy ones. We focus on everybody. And practices that do this operate at an entirely different, higher level of customer service, patient satisfaction, productivity, and profitability. And ultimately, that's what we want you to have. Anyway, a lot there. I hope this helps. Kind of just ran on it there at the end. I was on a roll, just kept talking. But I do hope this helps. If you have questions about any of this stuff, you can always email me at jeffb@mgeonline.com. I have the links on the episode webpage for that reactivation program if you want to check it out. And if you have any questions about MGE, you can find us online at mgeonline.com or call us at 800-640-1140. Folks, have a great week, and we will see you at the next episode.